You're welcome back to the conversation in New Central Television. It's now time for us to switch gears to South Africa, where the World Bank has approved a $1 billion loan to address its severe energy crisis, which has cost the country's worst electricity blackouts. The crisis is largely due to issues with the state-run power utility, Eskom, and its coal-fired power stations. South Africa's commitment to climate targets is at risk, with considerations of delaying the closure of some coal stations to address energy supply problems. The loan is a strategic response to South Africa's energy crisis and its transition to a low-carbon economy. Despite contributing less to global climate change, South Africa is a significant greenhouse gas emitter, and it requires around $80 billion over the next 5 years to transition to cleaner energy sources. Now, joining me this evening for this discussion is Chris Yelland, energy analyst, EE Business Intelligence. We also have Crown Prince Adil Nchabeleng, President, Transform RSA, an independent energy expert. One welcome to you, gentlemen, and thanks for joining me on the conversation.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to start with you, Chris. Can you provide us with a detailed analysis of the root causes of the current energy crisis in the Republic of South Africa, including the historical factors that have led to this situation? How did South Africa find itself in this conundrum?
Well, we could be spending an hour on the subject at least, and I'm sure I don't have that time available, but to try and keep it as short as possible, I think some very poor policy decisions around about 2008 to build two massive new coal-fired power stations is the root of the problems. These power stations have been delayed and with massive cost overruns. And 15 years later, after construction started, the one power station is only generating about half of the power that it should be. The other power station is performing reasonably after a lot of teething problems, but one of its units has suffered a major explosion. But short and tall of it, the massive time and cost overruns resulted in electricity shortages and a lot of policy confusion about new build, and a very slow and bureaucratic procurement process has led to the shortages that we find ourselves in. And these projects have really crippled Eskom financially, operationally, environmentally. Eskom is in a bad space. And I put a lot of this down to these really poor decisions taken many years ago that are manifesting themselves today.
Thank you, Chris. Now, Crown Prince Nchabeleng, the World Bank's approval of a $1 billion loan is a significant development. How specifically should this funding be allocated to address the energy crisis core issues, and what impact do you anticipate it will have on South Africa's energy landscape?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Look, the $1 billion loan, which is not actually a grant, is not that significant in the context of South Africa, given the fact that Eskom currently is trading at over 270 billion rand. So when you give them, a 19 billion rand, you're not making any difference. It's $1 billion. When we convert it to South African currency, it comes to about 19 billion rand. So in respect to transition South Africa's energy away from the current, high emissions which are related to coal, or you're using your current OCGs, which are based on diesel, you're going to need a far much more significant investment. $1 billion will not do it, and I think we are being actually, taken for a ride because, the multinationals and the international countries, which are the major polluters in the world, are currently pushing South Africa to move away from emissions which will contribute less than 1% in the world. And Africa does not even contribute that much in terms of pollution, yet we are the ones made to pay the price in respect to the global emissions that are due to international countries which are in the developed West as well as in the East. So It is not fair that we should be actually pushed to be taking loans to correct something that we have not created as a problem. South Africa is not a major emitter. And I hear around people saying that South Africa is a major emitter. No, in the context of the energy generation we produce on 50,000 megawatts maximum, it does not contribute that much in terms of emissions. And again, South Africa has taken a policy direction to say that there should be a project whereby Eskom should turn its coal power stations into high efficiency, low emissions power stations, which is a technology composition that you utilize in order to reduce your emissions. The current power stations have already emission reduction related technology. So the World Bank should look at a way of ensuring that countries can be incentivized, for instance, with grants. Give us grants to say, listen, we are looking at how we can expand and encourage countries to move towards renewable energy and to move towards storage, to move towards generation of green energy. And as a result, we're going to be giving you grants because we are the major polluters. We are in the West, we are in Asia, and we are the largest polluters in the world. And as a result, you get a grant incentive rather than a penalizing loan, which our coming generation will still have to be servicing the interest debt out of this loan for benefiting nothing out of it. As you know, that some of these loans don't even reach the shores of South Africa. The 1 billion will be released, but it will never come into the economy, and it will never show up our current foreign exchange as well as foreign reserves, in South Africa and give us a better standing. Because if that happens, automatically our currency would improve as a result. But we're not seeing that injection of that capital. And it's been spoken about. I mean, there's been other promises of 8.4 and $8.5 billion which were promised. Nothing has been delivered so far. So it's continuous promises. But we're not even going to be benefiting out of these loans that we're taking. Some are supposed to be loans and grants. So far, we've only been told promises.
It's a drop in the ocean compared where you look at the large scale of the problem. Thank you, Crown Prince. Now, Chris, the Crown Prince mentioned energy transition, and some of the issues South Africa is facing in its quest to transition to cleaner energy sources. South Africa's heavy reliance on coal-fired power stations is a major concern for environmental and health reasons. Chris, could you delve into the challenges and obstacles faced in transitioning to cleaner and more sustainable energy sources, and what strategies should be adopted to overcome them?
Yeah, look, the first thing I want to say is I disagree quite fundamentally with Adil. Look, South Africa, when you combine it with the rest of Africa, Africa is a relatively low carbon emitter. But South Africa stands out like a sore thumb on the African continent and is part of the club of the culprits. It is not a low carbon emitting country. It is a very high carbon emitting country. And together with the high intensity of coal-fired power stations in South Africa, which generate more than 80% of South Africa's electricity, together with Sasol, the synthetic fuel producer that uses coal as a fuel stock to produce synthetic oil, the combination of the two makes South Africa stand out like a sore thumb on the African continent and even on the world stage. So we are under a lot of scrutiny and pressure to reduce our carbon footprint, and rightfully so. We need to play our part. There is a so-called nationally determined contribution that South Africa has undertaken to make in reducing its carbon footprint, and that is a big challenge to reduce to net carbon zero or net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And the reduction in carbon intensity and the carbon emissions from the power generation sector is absolutely critical to achieve these commitments of our nationally determined contribution. And South Africa is absolutely committed to this end and to playing its rightful role in reducing the carbon emissions of South Africa as part of a global effort. And to do this, it needs to look at each and every industry. And the big ones, of course, are the electricity power generation sector, as well as the transportation sector. Of course, there's the cement sector, there's the steel sector, and there's the agricultural sector, all of which have to be looked at, and all of which, so we have to make, to analyze our nationally determined contribution and to allocate this to carbon budgets to each of our industries to effect the necessary changes that are needed by the end of 2050. Electricity is a very low-hanging fruit. It can come at a relatively low cost compared to some of the other initiatives that need to be taken, for example, in the transportation sector.
Chris, sorry to interrupt you.
Do you mean already a major move towards renewable energy?
Now, Chris, you did mention, you say electricity is low-hanging fruit. It can come at a cheap cost. Are you talking about renewable sources, clean sources of this electricity? Can you get that from?
Yeah.
Can you get cheap electricity?
Yeah, if I can just explain why this is a low-hanging fruit and why this is a unique opportunity for South Africa, and that is that the majority of our coal-fired power stations are relatively old and are going to have to be decommissioned anyway, because many of them have reached already or are at the point of reaching end of life. So we are going to have to spend the money to replace them anyway. And this is a unique timing, very well timed for South Africa to replace them with cleaner sources of energy, low carbon emitting source of energy. And that can come in various forms, whether it comes from renewable energy, wind, solar, battery energy storage, pumped water storage, gas to power, to complement the variability of renewable energy, and even nuclear power. These are cleaner, lower carbon options, and what we do know for sure is that we cannot, and we will be punished heavily if we try and replace them with new coal. The days of new coal in South Africa are absolutely over. They cannot be financed.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chris. I'd like to bring back Crown Prince Nchabeleng into the conversation. We're still talking about coal-fired plants, which are responsible for 80% of South Africa's energy needs, which provides 80% of it. Now, Crown Prince, President Cyril Ramaphosa's consideration of delaying the shutdown of some coal stations raises questions about South Africa's commitment to climate change targets. Could you elaborate on the potential short and long-term consequences of this decision on both energy security and climate goals? How do you navigate this intricate balancing act?
Yeah, I think let's be very frank and open. The issue of the current, so-called delay in terms of transitioning to low-carbon emission technologies such as solar and wind is an issue that South Africa has far surpassed the targets in terms of making sure that we have enough renewables in the system. Government itself has procured over 12,000 megawatts, and there's been already a retail increase in terms of rooftop solar in South Africa and people producing their own electricity independently. So in respect to the current situation of making sure that we can transition, we have reached our goals and we have far surpassed them. The only crisis right now we're sitting with is there are many rich old men like Chris Yelland going around telling everybody that government must shut down coal power stations, which are the lifeline of our economy. And as a result, they must be removed and be replaced with something that does not even have the quality of electricity that is needed. Today, we have a week whereby we have not had load shedding in South Africa as a result of the returning into operation of all the power stations that are needed in order to produce the electricity we need. We've got at least now a 60% electricity availability factor, which means that we are reaching almost a peak of 30,000 megawatts of electricity produced from the same coal power stations, which everybody says they must be shut down. So what do you want Africans to be? Where we must be told like little children, rich old men and old men like Chris Yelland coming here telling African politicians to say like little children, shut down your electricity and then follow what is not even working anywhere around the world. You go to Germany, they're using coal. You go to currently China, 800 megawatts. We're only using what, 30,000 megawatts. China uses 800,000 megawatts. I've not had the World Bank going to China and giving them structural conditions of accepting loans whereby they must transition completely away from their energy production. You go to, for instance, America. They have over 56 coal power stations. You go anywhere in the world, there is a lot of talks around moving away from this electricity, and yet nobody has ever looked at the fundamentals and the facts at source as to what is happening.
Thank you very much, Crown Prince. I would like Chris Yelland to respond to your statements. And also, as we wrap up, looking at the long term, what comprehensive strategies and policies do you believe are necessary to resolve this energy crisis and to facilitate a just transition to a low carbon economy and ensure energy security for the people of South Africa? If you can, in less than 2 minutes, I would appreciate, Chris.
Yeah, look, I won't try and respond to Adil's insults in calling me a rich old man. That is ageist, and it's frankly not true. I wish I was rich. But of course, that's just a silly insult. But to move beyond that, yes, it is absolutely critical that South Africa should transition and play its role in the world economy and play its part in decarbonization. We are, as I said, part of the club of the culprits. And if we do not play our part, whether we believe it is fair or not, and we can cry about it till the cows come home, it doesn't help. We are going to be punished through cross-border adjustment tariffs on our exports of products that are produced from high carbon electricity. We have to recognize that, and we have to do what we have to do. And as I say, crying about it doesn't help. We just have to do what we have to do. We have to work out a clear plan for the decarbonization. And the thing is that this plan is going to save South Africa a lot of money going forward. It's going to create a lot of jobs, clean jobs and quality jobs. And that is the goal.
Thank you, Chris Yelland, gentlemen. Thank you, Chris Yelland, energy analyst, EE Business Intelligence, and Crown Prince Adil Nchabeleng, President, Transform RSA, and an independent energy expert. Thank you, gentlemen, for your contribution to the program.